For me, I might look like, oftentimes we try so hard to not have disability be our identity. And I don't think it is. We're more than, I don't think any of us should be that one-dimensional person. I think what makes us is so many different things.
Myself as an example of just kind of some of the labels that could possibly be applied to me, and just to kind of illustrate the difference of what my life on paper looks like as opposed to what my actual life and the reality of my life looks like. So I want to tell you a little bit about the reality of my life. People might meet us and look at us and assume that we need a lot of support, and everyone uses support, right? But it's not always labeled as support. But
intersectionality is the acknowledgement that everyone has their own unique experiences of discrimination and oppression, and we must consider everything and anything that can marginalize people, whether it's gender, class, sexual orientation, physical ability, or mental health.
So this one is another visual representation, but it's interactive. So you start at the top and then you scroll down, and it adds more information and provides a visual explanation as you go through. It talks about access, inclusion, participation, and recognition. And you just keep scrolling, and it brings up points to consider and why intersectionality is important. And as you go on, it provides kind of that layering effect similar to the Venn diagram approach that just illustrates how things can become more complicated when different backgrounds or identities intersect.
Often when we think of intersectionality, people refer to this wheel of power and privilege. Now, as you can see on these wheels, there are many levels by which someone is either marginalized or they have opportunity to obtain power and privilege for themselves.
So what do we do with this information? So one thing that we do know from several studies is that more than one level of stigma with individuals, including those who have disabilities, those who experience mental health issues, and those who are part of this community, they often face a multi-layered level of stigma that can lead to something that's called minority stress, and it can lead to even to lower life expectancy. It can lead to just lower quality of life in general. And so the purpose of pointing out this intersectionality is to see that this is a very that intersectionality really builds on itself and power dynamics build on themselves. And so it's really important that we address this intersection and we advocate with and for these individuals.
So first things first, let's first examine national statistics. We recognize here at CAPSA that abuse can happen to anyone regardless of gender, but I think it is important to address that it is happening disproportionately to women, and especially women with disabilities. So nationally, 23.8% of women and 20.1% of men in the US have a disability. When women with disabilities experience intimate partner violence at twice the rate of other populations. That includes intimate partner sexual violence, stalking, psychological aggression, as opposed to their non-disabled peers, as well as men with disabilities are more likely to experience intimate partner stalking, psychological aggression, as opposed to their non-disabled peers.
So in 2007, I started a program that we call NEF, which is Niños Especiales Familias Fuertes. It was designed because we knew that families didn't have the support they needed when they had children with special healthcare needs.
This very much is it's beyond a family support group. It really is a way to empower our families that have special needs kids, and they tell us who they want to hear from and what they want to learn about, right?
So it's important to recognize that disability is shaped by cultural beliefs, values, and social norms, and can vary significantly. Understanding this cultural perspective is essential for promoting inclusivity and respect for diverse ways of understanding and experiencing the world.
This is the perspective of disability, the traditional Native approach with a Western approach of thought. So I think these approaches are things that we as professionals are to understand. We as professionals have a perspective of where the American Indian are coming from, have an understanding in terms of what we can offer to make that individual become much more comfortable and to do something that is it brings meaning to your patient, if you will.
Refugees with disability, refugees in general, they face multiple challenges, but then adding disability to the mix makes it even more difficult for individuals who are refugees and have disability at the same time. When we talk about disability, a lot of times, for instance, with people from sub-Saharan Africa, it's to do with physical disability. The person is unable to run, is unable to walk and stuff like that. And like I said, refugees are people who are forced to flee their own country because of a war or disaster or whatever it is. So in the case of a person with a disability, you would not be able to flee or run just like the other people that do not have a disability.
So I will say, and I think this even speaks volumes to the American culture too, is that we silence people that have challenges. And I think within like the Latino culture, it's the same thing. And I don't think they do it out of spite, but I've seen this all my life. But children that I grew up with, if they had like significant disabilities, their parents never wanted them to be labeled. And I can understand that, right? Like we live in a culture where labels are everything. And even in the American cultures, that's what it is, right? And so I would say that that was one of the biggest things. And even I would say because of the misogyny that's in the culture and my own culture, oftentimes it was like, well, they just need to buck up and just deal with it. Obviously they said it in a really horrible way, but I think a lot of it was just rub some dirt on it, you'll be fine, or you're just making it as an excuse because you don't want to go help out with chores. A lot of the information is always in English, it's never in Spanish. So how are we supposed to how are people who don't speak English going to know what information and resources are out there? Like everything is not tailored to those type of demographics, and I think that's what makes it impactful as well.
So a lot of my family does not understand my diagnosis. So my mom made a comment where she said, oh, it'll go away, just pray and it'll go away. And you know, she comes from a very religious background, and that's okay, like that her faith helps her. But it's not okay for me when what I'm going through is minimized, because my disease will never go away. It is what I will have. And oftentimes, I also have comments where a lot of my family have type 2, and they don't understand why I do what I do. Because the amount of work that goes into it, because they see me doing it, and they're like, they really think type 1 and type 2 is very similar or the same. So trying to educate somebody the differences is where it gets really frustrating. And you know, like when my dad was in India, he's like, oh, everybody here has type 2. I don't know what the big deal is about you. I don't know why you're freaking out or what's going on with you. All these people are fine. But type 1 is very different from type 2. I will not be alive if I didn't have insulin and if I didn't keep on top.
Interacting with the OCD community is it's honestly amazing just to have these people who understand like the diagnoses and the things that are going on in your head, and who are there to support you. I think being an Asian amongst a lot of my peers who are white can sometimes be difficult and hard, because I don't think they necessarily always understand why the thing I just heard or why the thing I just encountered is like considered a microaggression or considered like offensive or hurtful. And I think they really try hard at understanding that, but I think it's just like someone who doesn't understand that as well. And like those are the times where I wish that I did have more of an Asian population around me. Being raised in a white family has really changed my perspective, and I have different perspectives on life than maybe some Asian Americans who have been raised in an Asian family. Like I've experienced microaggressions, I've experienced racism, I've experienced discrimination. But like my immediate community, those interactions are very comfortable and safe.
When I was downtown Salt Lake, I would take the buses. Like, let's be honest, it would be so easy to wheel out of your apartment or whatever and get on the bus and go where you need to go. We don't really, like, we have a bus, but it only goes certain places. Where I live, I'm 5 miles from the grocery store. I'm not taking my wheelchair to the grocery store. There's no sidewalks. I live out in the country. I would get ran over trying to take my wheelchair down the main roads. I mean, there's a highway that I would have to take. I don't think I can get my chair to 45 miles an hour as much as I try. And so it definitely changes. So now I have to have like a wheelchair van. It just is different what I need to be successful and to maintain than if I lived somewhere different.